I had my camera set up to give a class, and I thought, let's do a surprise live stream and see if anybody shows up, and just see what's going on with you guys. Let's start it off by looking at today in the sky. We're looking at Saturn entering early into Aries. At the same time, Jupiter has entered just about equally early into Cancer. As you know, Aries and Cancer are square to each other. So you have an interesting situation indeed. Where you have negative and positive things mixed up together. Because typically Jupiter in Cancer is a very positive thing and Saturn in Aries is a very negative thing. And you have it both happening at the same time and not even out of structure with each other. It's in step with each other. They're exactly square with each other. Even more so, the Sun is also right at the end of Gemini right now, so it's quite close to Jupiter. I think that says a lot about Israel-Iran situation. Current. That's an interesting thing. Another thing is Mars. Mars is at the very early degree of Virgo. So Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter currently are all at the very early degrees. Mars at 1, Saturn at 1, Jupiter at 2 of their respective signs. So that's putting Mars into sidestep or sync, lockstep. That's the right word. Putting Mars into lockstep with that whole thing. So it's giving it, making more sense that it has something to do with the war. And also, we progress this. Kind of want to find out when Mars gets to K2. It's July, mid-July. At that time, one is kind of inclined to predict a nasty thing happening. So, that's one possibility. It's very hard to make predictions because you have to comb through so many different possibilities to find out the one that's the most likely. So that is quite the possibility. However, that situation of the initial situation, which is Saturn and Jupiter being close together, is broken off. So it's also a possibility that it's not with the same thing that's going on right now, not with Iran. And Saturn is reversing its course on what day? Yeah, like right at that day, mid-July. It's reversing its course and getting out of Aries. So it could be a situation where there's a decisive military event in mid-July, which signals the beginning of the end of that conflict in mid-July. That's just what I pulled up impromptu with this impromptu thing. Now I come back here and I see we got some chats going on. So yeah, I just felt like I have my camera turned on, I have my mic set up. Why not do a live stream? So go ahead and ask anything. What would be the outcome of the war? It's going to take hours for a person to figure that out, unless they just like to guess or they have just like crystal ball kind of insights. Like I said, when you do prediction, the thing is you look at an array of possibilities and then you comb out the less likely ones until you come up with the ones that are the more likely, and occasionally you end up with one that's obviously the most likely. It would be very difficult to say what the outcome is, but it looks like you have a situation going on where there's a mix up of curses and blessings at the same time. There is bad things happening, but maybe for good reasons, or good things happening maybe for bad reasons, or bad outcomes from good things, or good outcomes from bad things. That kind of situation with Saturn debilitated, square Jupiter exalted. And then with Mars being lockstep with that whole thing, it has to do with fighting. So obviously knowing what's going on, we can say it has to do with potential end of an Islamic republic, which a great chunk of population would see as a great blessing. Another chunk of population would see great misfortune. Again, you can see it as some unprovoked attack, which is a very negative thing, or you can see it as some kind of a good move, politically speaking, because it may have a good outcome. So that's the kind of situation that we're looking at with the war. And then the outcome of it, the only thing I can say about that is it seems like we wait until mid-July, until there's some kind of a decisive event, military event, which then makes the end and outcome clear. We'll follow after that shortly. Hey, everybody. Thank you, Carter. I'm glad you liked that. Hi, SK. Hi, Lisa. Aaron has a question. Is Venus in the 5th house Rohini good? It's fantastic, Aaron. Nobody would not want Venus in Rohini in the 5th house. But just watch the videos that I do. Like, I just record. Members already have the video. There's this thing YouTube told me you can turn on members. I turn on members. Then I got a bunch of members. I don't really know what it is, except it's nice. I think I get like a donation from that or something. But now what I do is I release the videos to members immediately and then on a schedule to everybody else. So the members already have access to Saturn in the 5th, Saturn in the 6th. But if you're not a member, you can go look at Saturn in the 4th, 3rd, 2nd, 1st. And you can get a sense of how you interpret things. Like Venus in the 5th in Rohini, it has a theme, a symbolic theme to it, but every theme has a polarity of how it can play out in a positive way, how it can play out in a negative way. And there's steps that you take to figure out which end of the polarity is relevant to a particular Venus. For example, Venus in Rohini in the 5th house is great. It's just fantastic. But then you wouldn't really want to have it with an aspect from a debilitated planet, or with Venus's zodiac lord being debilitated, etc. There's ways that you can make it go sour that could give you negative permutations of the same symbolism. But generally speaking, it's a really lovely thing. Bhagavatam Part 6, Sangh Banerjee is asking for it. I wish you could. Actually, we're at the end of Bhagavatam Part 5, but the problem at the end of Bhagavatam Part 5, that's why the camera is set up, actually, because we have a class. I just finished giving a class on Chapter 21, which is the sun's movements. So the zodiac actually was defined in that chapter. And the change of the days and nights and the causes of the sun's movement, etc. It's so very fascinating. The speed of the sun's movement and so forth. It just takes so long because astronomy is such a measurable subject. So if you got it right or if you got it wrong is very obvious because you can measure it. So therefore, it takes a lot of work to make sure I got it right. Also because it's not really being spoken for the purpose of astronomy or astrology as much as it's being spoken for the purpose of Prem, Bhagavat Prem, but it's not that it's going to be wrong astronomically and astrologically. So he's not directly spoon feeding us the astronomical facts because he's more interested in giving us the inspirations, the inspirational way of seeing the universe. That's really the focus of what Bhagavatama is doing at the end of Canto 5, Part 5. So it's taking me forever. And then I moved my house to a new place, so I had to take a break as well. So forget about Part 6 for a while. Just ask for Part 5, because it's still not done. Yash asks, where do you check your planetary positions? Well, you just have to have a reliable software, ephemeris book, and you can do it yourself, or you just have a reliable software. I just opened one software, my screen, called ephemeris. That's how you check. If you don't have software dedicated on your thing, then you have to have a reliable website that gives you access to such software. And you have to be sure that you like the settings that they use, or you've adjusted the settings to be what you like, because there's different ways of mapping things. There's another question here from Rustal too. Can you say a few words about planet in its own sign but bad houses? Yeah, sure. Look at some of the specific examples. Like, okay, so Saturn in the 4th house is not a good house for it. And so I have a video about Saturn in the 4th house already up on the channel. So watch that and look at the difference between the positive variance and the negative variance, depending on whether Saturn is dignified or not. Depending largely on whether Saturn is dignified or not. Then you'll understand what a planet in a unwelcoming house. So also, please understand, it's not that a house is necessarily welcoming or unwelcoming, but it's welcoming or unwelcoming to particular planets. The 6th house is very welcoming to Saturn and Mars, but it's not very welcoming to Jupiter and Venus. The 4th house is very welcoming to Jupiter and Venus, but it's not very welcoming to Saturn and Mars, etc. So when you have a planet that is in an unwelcoming house, it might still have a great dignity, and so you have to bear all those things in mind at once. So I encourage you to watch a video, like watch Saturn in the 3rd, my video on Saturn in the 3rd, where it's in a welcoming house, and see the examples of Saturn in positive or negative dignity in a welcoming house. Then watch Saturn in the 4th video, and you can see the positive and negative dignity for that. SK asks, if Jupiter is retrograde and debilitated in Gemini, the 8th house, and the rule of the 8th house is in the 12th, when one comes to the Jupiter month, is the outcome benefic or malefic? Jupiter can't be debilitated in Gemini. SK. I don't know. And also, is the outcome benefic or malefic? Depends on what you want. It depends, and which can be determined by the rest of the chart, seeing the rest of the chart, what a person is interested in. Or it's also somewhat up to you to decide what you're interested in and how you're going to utilize the situation. If you've got a situation where a planet in the 8th house with its lord in the 12th is becoming active, and you are the kind of person that loves exotic things, then you're going to have a very happy period when that's activated. But if you're a person who likes very plain, reliable, familiar things, or needs those particular things at that point in time, then you're going to have a tough time during that period. Oh, I saw a question. Do you use a Western? Thank you, Caio Rodriguez. Do you use a Western chart calculation but use Eastern analysis with nakshatras? Here, Carter, go to this link that I just put into the chat, my website, and then go check out the tropical information. It's tropical calculations, which is the Vedic intended way. And it's tropical calculations for tropical things. Sidereal calculations for sidereal things. Sidereus means star. Tropos means a way marker, a waypoint in a journey. So the sun has 4 tropos, the 2 equinoxes and 2 solstices. Then the sun's position relative to those tropos is the demarcation for the zodiac. Sidereal things also exist, the sun's position or the planet's position relative to stars. The nakshatras are to be calculated sidereally, and zodiac signs are to be calculated tropically, and the interplay between the two changes slowly over time, which is what's tracked by something called Ayanamsha. Julie N. S. to join the lectures on Bhagavatam. Julie, if it is, I certainly have no opposition to it, but if it is to be, then someone will contact you and get you in that group. Because I don't really run the group, I just teach the group. Mochi Shome. Oh wait, this is a long career guidance. I can't give you the career guidance just in the, live chat. Is there a link between the flower of life and astrology? I would have to know what the flower of life is. I'm not so sure. Spacebug, thank you so much. Olivia says, Bhagavad Gita says to use tropical. I think you mentioned in the video, but Vedic is used by Hindus. Bhagavad Gita doesn't give any information about astronomy. It does give some slight information about astronomy, but it doesn't give any information about the zodiac. But the Bhagavat Purana gives detailed information about astronomy. And indeed, like every Purana, Vishnu Purana, Padma Purana, any Siddhanta, like Surya Siddhanta, they only define the zodiac tropically. Capricorn asks, do you think it's wise to check the chart of one's own child? I do. I think it's wise. But I know that there's a certain personality type for whom it might not be very good. But then again, that particular type of personality might have a hard time with a lot of things. So like the particular personality type who I would kind of steer away from checking the chart of their child is one who is over anxious or over prone to anxiety. Or they have like an over desire to control the outcome of things, an over necessity to control the outcome of things. Then you probably are just going to wind up throwing a monkey wrench into the thing, or just getting depressed and stressed out about things you don't need to be depressed and stressed out about. But for most people, I think it's great. You get a heads up on who your child is and also how their emotions and intellect works. One of the difficulties of a parent is being able to put yourself in the eyes and ears and mind of your child to understand what your child is experiencing. But if a reading of your child's chart can help you get inside their head to experience you and the world the way they're experiencing it, which is extremely important for a parent to do. Hey, Johnny Barker, I haven't seen you in a long time. Can you share a few thoughts about the Adityas, the 12 sons? Yes, so the sun, we just went over this today, just before this, in the Bhagavatam class. The 12, it's just that the sun has a 12-spoke wheel, and as it rolls around the sky, the light that comes off it is different. The light that the sun emits, metaphorically speaking, is different depending on its angular relationship. Not metaphorically, actually speaking, the way that the light hits the earth is different depending on the angle between the sun and the earth. Hence, you get different effects on the weather at a particular location, and it's location specific. So therefore, the Vedic scriptures describe the sun as having 12 distinct aspects, one for each Rashi. And they name the sun by the 12 different names. Eurenicus asks, philosophically, what do you think it means for a planet to have 100% dignity in D1 but 0 dignity in D9? The D9 is the dharma of the thing. I mean, first of all, yeah, so the interpretations of the low dignity in D9 is what is affecting your core. Like I have a debilitated moon, Navamsha, in the 4th house. My moon is in Scorpio in the 4th house, Navamsha. So what does that mean? That my core dharma, is it a very smiley person? Is it a very outgoing, happy-go-lucky person? No, it's a Scorpio moon in the 4th house. But that doesn't mean that my surface behavior with people that I meet has to be all serious and mystical and emotionally, emo. So, because the 9th house is specifically oriented to describe the inner dharma of a person. So whatever your low dignity planet is telling you in a D9 chart, you just always remember that pertains to the theme of that chart. Time for a plug for my new reports on your subdivisions. Go to my website, victorcara.com, and you can get all your subdivisions interpreted for you. So sometimes there's getting to be a lot of people here, isn't there? 72. When I turned it on, I was like, nobody's here. So it's getting hard to catch up with the chat, and maybe we might shut it off in a bit. And then I apologize to people for whom the gods have auto-scrolled. So I don't see your... Excuse me. Thank you, TT. Thank you, Carter. Does the house suffer if it's rustaltu? Rustaltu. Says, does the house suffer if its lord is in a bad house for it, but it's in its own sign? Doesn't it, of course? No, actually, so if a planet has good dignity, it will do its best with whatever house it's in. So it's always advantageous to get a planet in good dignity. Okay, do you understand that? That's very important. If you have an exalted planet, it's a nice thing. It doesn't matter what house it's in. It will therefore make the best out of whatever symbolism it can have in whatever house it's in. Similarly, if it's whatever it's a dispositor of, then that's good for that house to have an exalted. Of course, you try to, what's up? How to rock astrology. Of course, you try to juggle 55,000 different aspects of interpretation and calculation. It's hard. It's not easy to juggle all these things. And that's why astrology requires a very clear mind, a very calm mind, certain kind of an intellect. But even if you can't juggle all of them, and write enormous software code to try to juggle them for you, if you just get the basic things down, then you get the basic ideas straight. So the basic thing to get down is that the exaltation, the good dignity is good, bad dignity is bad. Vivek Chand says, why full moon birth is seen auspicious even when moon is debilitated in Scorpio? Because full moon is a strong state for the moon. It's strong for the moon to be, but somebody that's just saying that a full moon in Scorpio, it's not the same as a full moon in Libra or a full moon anywhere else. You just get oversimplifications of things. You have to realize that too, which I definitely realized long ago, and unfortunately realize every day, that most people don't know what they're talking about, even when they talk. And in fact, it's because they don't know that they don't know what they're talking about that they talk so much and with so much confidence. So just because people are saying something is auspicious or inauspicious or good and bad, at a certain point in your journey of knowledge, you have to grow up and realize that you have to figure things out for yourself. And you don't figure it out from scratch unless you want to spend the next 250,000 lifetimes working on it. And you don't figure it out based on hearsay of what so-and-so and so-and-so is saying. You go to authentic, reliable sources. And your only difficulty is to figure out what the authentic, reliable source is. Somebody had a question about something which was quite easy. Oh yeah, I have Vargottama Mars in Cancer. Is that a dignified Mars? Yes. In whatever subdivision the Vargottama is occurring. So for example, you're referring to the because Vargottama is not just Navamsha. It's any Amsha, any zodiacal Amsha can have a Vargottama. You know what I mean? You can have Mars in Virgo, and in Virgo in the D7, then that Mars is Vargottama in the D7. You can have Mars in Cancer, and then in Cancer as well, in the Navamsha, and then that Mars is Vargottama in the Navamsha. That means it's got good dignity in the Navamsha. It doesn't change its dignity anywhere else. It changes its dignity for how you interpret it relative to the Navamsha. Let's say we're going to take a couple of more questions. Although this is great. I'm having fun. I haven't done a live stream in a long time. Hey, Stephanie, I haven't seen you in a long time, too. Wait, this is interesting. How much does one's personality resemble their nakshatra yonies? This is a very wild question. Get into this conversation about how much people resemble their yoni. How much does one personality resemble their nakshatra yoni? Probably a lot, because the yoni is the source of everything. But to be frank with you, completely frank with you, I have no idea what a nakshatra yoni is. I've never seen one. I've never seen one described. So, I don't know. Probably somebody like Dr. Pi or somebody is giving information about that. You should ask a question. How to rock astrology. It would be nice. I'll definitely try to answer it if I see it come up. Oh, wait, you got one. Have you heard this? Sun and moon equals 6 chakra, Mercury 5th. Yes, we've heard that. So actually, the zodiac. So actually, this was what we were just studying in Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 21. Is the interesting thing about the zodiac is that it's vertical. The text says that the universe has an upper and lower hemisphere that mirror each other exactly, and then it has a kernel in between. Well, antariksha, the inner space. And in the middle of that middle space is the sun, and the middle of the sun's middle, at the middle, is the equinox. Hence, the extreme importance of the equinox to any kind of measurement of anything. And hence the tropical, argument comes out. Anyway, the zodiac and the year happens as a result of the sun having a north, up, and south, down movement relative to that middle point of the equinox. And the zodiac signs, it says, are aligned around that movement with Aries and Libra at the equinox, and Cancer and Capricorn at the extreme north and south. So this spine that goes through, the spine upon which the sun climbs and falls is Meru, the spine of the world. And so similarly in any creature which also has a spine, the spine is our Meru, and the sun has this movement up and down it. The energy within the body has a movement up and down the spine of the nervous system that all runs up and down the spine. And so therefore you can transpose the zodiac map onto the spinal map. And you can get locations of the zodiac signs relative to the different areas in the spine, which then have the chakras, are at the base of the spine all the way up to the top of the crown. So then you can just take the owners of the signs that are at that particular spot on the spine where the chakras are located and associate those planets with those chakras. So it does match what you said. Ooh, somebody's watching me from Japan. Joanna, thank you. Thank you, Rasalta. What do you think about astrology to predict markets? Samuel says, I think it's good because it's like how difficult this particular section of Bhagavatam is for me to translate, is you have to get it right because it's obvious if it's right or wrong because you can measure it, right? And I think that's for that same reason, astrology used to predict markets is very good for the sake of astrology as a discipline, because it's obvious if you get it right or wrong, isn't it? Because you have to measure it. You say that Bitcoin is going up and it doesn't go up, then you got it wrong. There's no like ifs, ands, or buts about it. However, the problem for me is I have no natural spontaneous interest in the subject. So I'm not going to get interested in trying to predict markets. It's just like asking somebody that doesn't like classical music to listen to classical music. Julie, I'll tell you one thing though. If you have my email, send me an email, Julie. This is an interesting question. I want to see this. You break down the zodiac signs to their fundamentals in your simple beauty of astrology. Can the nakshatras be broken down to the fundamentals? Yes, that's my book, 27 Stars, 27 Gods. The problem is it's a different way of breaking it down. The zodiac is built by the sun's movement relative to the 4 points, the 2 equinoxes and solstices. So you get things like cardinal, fixed, dual, earth, water, fire, air, and male and female. And then you get dispositors based on that. I mean, the owners. Sign rule is based on that. So zodiac signs are created by those 3 constituents, the element, the modality, and the owner. Nakshatras are not. Nakshatras are not based on any relationship to equinox or solstice. They have a temporary relationship to equinox and solstice, but they're not based on that. They're based by the shapes, the visual shapes of stars. And therefore, how that visual shape has attracted a particular kind of divine energy to it. So the only constituent really that you need to concern yourself with to understand the nakshatra is the devata of the nakshatra, the god of the nakshatra. So therefore, I wrote the book, 27 Stars, 27 Gods, to kind of prove that or demonstrate it. That you don't need any other mumbo-jumbo about nakshatras to fully understand the nakshatra. You just need to know about the god that is in the nakshatra. Then after having done that, I came to know about the Taittiriya Brahmana, which has some descriptions of the nakshatras. There's no logic or reasoning to it. It's not like it's saying it's made of these ingredients and therefore it has this thing. It's just saying this nakshatra is like this. But it's also very useful, so I translated that also and published it as a book called Nakshatra, the Authentic Heart of Vedic Astrology. All those books are available on my site, victicare.com. Go there right now. It's a great website. Yavan asks, do I sell my music somewhere? Yeah, sure, just look for it. There's all different bands. No, wait. I don't sell it personally. Chocolate Thunder, what a good name. Chocolate Thunder. You know, there's this candy in Japan. It's a very cheap chocolate bar called Black Thunder, which probably means chocolate thunder. Jerry is asking, so you're saying if a planet is Vargottama in any Varga chart in a sign that's otherwise regarded as an enemy sign, it has a good dignity. That is exactly what I'm saying, and I'm not just saying it. That is what is said by every authority on the subject. Like Mantreshwar of Aldipika, or the author of Brihat Parashara or anything. That's the idea. Actually, that confuses a lot of people when they get my reports. If they are the type of person that goes into the appendix and looks at all the breakdown of calculations, a lot of times I get questions, how come I have, Mars in Cancer? Like I have Mars in Cancer in my main chart and you gave me 0 dignity for that. But here, over here in the D12 or whatever, it's also in Cancer, but you give me 80 dignity for that. Why? That's why. Vargottama. So a Vargottama causes the planet to feel as though it is in its own sign. Because that is exactly where it is. It's in its own sign, literally, right? If you are in Cancer, and your subdivision within Cancer is also Cancer, then you're in its own sign. You're in its own subdivision. So you get a dignity like as if you were Swakshetra, domicile. No, I haven't seen Ernest. I wish you would send me an email or something. Let me know what kind of work he's working on. Ernst. Stormy asks what are intercepted signs. You need a Western astrologer to tell you that. I don't know. It's not a technique that I've seen described in Vedic. Tree Benny says, does astrology prove there's no free will? Do me a favor, to answer that question, go to my channel page. Then scroll down to the bottom and there's a playlist called The Big Questions. And then there's a video called Free Will. Watch that one. Thank you. How to rock. Shubhas, hello, sir. How do you see Mars in Cancer? Mars in 4,000. That's what I did that earlier. Sorry. Rewind. Because I talked about that because I have that in the Navamsha. Early morning, there's too many. I think I'm going to end it up here. Samuel asks, how far do you think we are into Kali Yuga? Now, when you say how far do you think we are, it's like as if I have my own opinion about it. And if my opinion really is worth any more or less than anybody else's opinion, it's not. It's just my opinion. But the opinion of texts that are kind of accepted as the basis for different frameworks, like the things that have defined the yugas, the opinions of those texts are more important than your or my opinion. And if you don't have the erudition to be able to tell the difference between that opinion and somebody else's, then that's a problem. But according to authentic texts, Kali Yuga is not even started yet. Surprise, surprise. There's all these people saying, we're not in Kali Yuga, we're not in Kali Yuga, we're finished with Kali Yuga, yay. Great. I hope we're not finished with Kali Yuga because it doesn't look that great, friends. But besides that little joke, actually, I also would say that we're not in Kali Yuga, but it's not because it's done. Because it hasn't started yet. So what does that mean? We're in Dwapara Yuga? Nope. There's Sandhis between, just like there's a period of the day where you're neither in daytime nor night. There's periods of time when you're neither in one yuga or the other. So there's 30,000 years of dawn to Kali Yuga. 30,000 or 40,000, something like that. Dawn hasn't even progressed. The other thing I just want to also advise you guys is to realize that time is such a subjective. There isn't really any of us that is living 40,000 years, or what to speak of 400,000 years. There really isn't any meaning to arguing about things that last that long, because none of us last that long. And when you don't last that long, then it really makes no difference if something is 400,000 years long or 4,000 years long, because both of those are outside of your domain. So I think it's important to realize that, because you can't In other words, 4,000 years is over just as quick as 4 million years. Really, because consciousness is only ever grasping an eternal moment now. It's not grasping 4 million years at a bite. So there's no real reason to get too strung up on whether or not something is lasting 4 million years or 1,000 years. And not to feel like, oh shit, I have to wait forever for this to be over. It's going to be over. Like, it's not that if something lasts 4 million years, you have to wait longer than if it only lasts 4,000 years. In either case, the wait is infinite and infinitesimal. So the only problem really with long yugas that people don't like is that it doesn't really match archaeology. It doesn't really match archaeology. So some people will say, well, archaeology is wrong, but it's probably not wrong. It's actually looking at things. It maybe doesn't have the whole picture, that's for sure. But the part of the picture that it has can't be discounted by a rational thinker. So you just have to realize that there are different timescales occurring simultaneously. We actually talked about this today. So in the Bhagavatam class, it was just prior to this, not on YouTube. The Shuka in the Bhagavatam says that the sun moves at 1.6 thousand kilometers per second. Now, the sun's movement, which is also explained in there, is caused by this thing called a runa, which is the spin of the earth, which creates a magnetosphere. So it's actually the spin of the earth, which is causing the apparent movement of the sun, according to Shuka. And the spin of the earth is 1.6 thousand kilometers, but not per second, per hour. But an hour is exactly 360 times longer than a second. And the question about these yugas is also a question of 360, because there's 360 generalized days in a year. And so there's these two different time scales. Just like there's a daily time scale of 24 hours, which is mirroring a yearly time scale of 360 days. And there is a octave of that also, where there's 360 days becomes a day, and 360 of those units becomes a year on a celestial scale. So, and the two time spans can operate simultaneously. And the way to explain this is, if you take a piece of rope and you tie a rock to it and you spin it, you'll see a speed of movement near your hand, which is quite slow. You could measure it as 1 millimeter per second. But if you go out to the end of a 10-foot rope and measure the movement of that rock on that same rope that's moving 1 millimeter per second here, and it's moving 100 millimeters per second up, or 1,000 even, depending on how far it is. It's the same rope with it's the same physical thing, the same velocity actually. And so since time is caused by movement and change, you can get some kind of dawning of an idea that there's simultaneous timescales that operate at the same time, where a human being is experiencing something on a scale of thousands of years, but it may actually be transpiring on a scale of 100,000 of years. And that leads me back to saying, don't get too hung up on measurements of time. All right, so I think we're going to finish it up there. Thanks everybody for joining, and I hope you enjoyed this surprise live stream. Take a look at the channel for the other videos that I have. If you're hungry now, you like this appetizer, you want to watch more videos, there's plenty more videos there. I'm sure there's a bunch you haven't seen yet. And also there's my website, my reports, my books, etc. Hope you all can get into that. Thank you very much.